I was working with a woman recently who came to me because one thing that she really feared and dreaded kept coming true, and she couldn't figure out what she was doing wrong. The story she told me was about a friend who had invited her to come over to get together with a group of women one afternoon to hang out, to visit, to have some drinks, to just be together. And at first she was feeling really excited because she hadn't seen this group of friends for quite a while, and she was really looking forward to getting together and having a lovely afternoon with some friends. But soon after the excited thoughts started, all of a sudden, some anxiety-producing thoughts started to come into her mind. She started to think things like, oh, well, what if I don't have anything interesting to say? Or what if I can't really make a good connection with these women that I haven't seen for a long time? Or what if they don't actually really want me there and they just invited me so that if I found out, I wouldn't be upset? Now, this thing that originally she had felt really good about had turned into something that she was dreading, that she was worried about, that she was stressing about, that she was convinced was not going to go well. But the day arrived for the get-together, the now dreaded get-together, and she showed up, knocked on the door at the friend's house, and she kind of heard muffled behind the door, "Come on in." She walked in, she took off her shoes, she kind of looked down the hall and could see all the other women sitting in the living room, visiting, having a good time, and immediately started to think the thoughts of, see, I knew this wasn't going to be good. No one even greeted me at the door. They don't even really want me here. But she went into the room. She kind of was feeling a little bit held back, was feeling a little bit already kind of hurt and angry, although she was trying to put on a happy face. She sat down. She kind of tried to make some conversation. The conversations were happening, but she didn't feel this big sense of being wanted, being included, being connected to the other women. And then she started to think, well, they don't actually really want me here. See, I was right. They just invited me out of courtesy or to prevent me from getting upset. I shouldn't be here. No one wants me. This is awful. And then she looked at her phone, kind of pretended that she got a distressing text message from her nanny who was with her kids and said that she needed to go, and left the situation. This is a prime example of an unhelpful and destructive thought pattern called catastrophizing. There are two different types of catastrophic thinking that we're going to talk about today, and we're going to look at how getting stuck in this type of habitual thinking can even create our own most feared self-fulfilling prophecies. And then I'm going to teach you how to start breaking through this destructive thought pattern so that you can be thinking better, feeling better, showing up better, and having better for yourself and your life every day. But before that, if you're new here, welcome to our incredible corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you are back again, it is always good to have you. Special shout out to my shifters. Great to have you here. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. The button's down there. If you get something out of the video, if you could like it, hit that like button. That would be amazing. Either way, my name is Julia Christina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, that you can get more information about in the description below. And I help heart-centered humans break through the destructive patterns, thought patterns, behaviors, beliefs, and actions that are getting in their way and holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And catastrophizing definitely falls into that category. So the two types of catastrophizing, the first one we just talked about with our example with, let's call her Sarah, that she had the type of catastrophizing, say that 10 times fast, that things are going to go terribly without even knowing for sure. You notice how this singular event that originally she was even feeling good about, but then her catastrophizing, catastrophic thoughts came in and tried to convince her, and actually did a very good job of convincing her that things were going to go terribly, something was going to go wrong, it wasn't going to be good. And then she started turning against herself, thinking, they were just inviting me out of pity. They don't even really want me there. No one wants me around. I'm unlovable, right? Like it can spiral into these cycles of really self-destructive thoughts very quickly. That's the first type of catastrophizing. The second type is after something that has happened that didn't go exactly the way that we hoped it would, we make it mean something awful. For example, you didn't get the raise. Oh, well, I suck. I don't know what I'm doing. My boss thinks I'm an idiot. Or someone doesn't text you back right away and you automatically think, well, they hate me. They're ghosting me. They don't even really want to be friends with me. Why do I even bother making any effort at all? Or your partner gets home late and you think, well, they don't respect me. They definitely don't love me, or they wouldn't do something like this. Or you didn't get the job that you applied for. Well, I'm never going to get a job. I'm never going to get a job, at least that I love, and I'm going to be stuck in this place forever. So that's the second part, is really just making something terrible or awful out of any outcome that is not ideal. It's assuming the worst about something that is either going to happen in the future or making the outcome that isn't ideal mean the worst, or at least something pretty awful. Take a minute now and ask yourself, and be honest, how do you think either about upcoming events, commitments, situations, anything that is coming up in the future? How do you think about it now? Do you assume that things are going to be fine, that things are going to go well, that things are going to be okay, maybe even great? Or does your brain start to come up with all kinds of stories that make you think that it's going to go terribly, something bad's going to happen, you're going to look like an idiot, you're not going to be able to do it, you're going to fail, someone's going to do something or say something that's going to make you feel terrible, something is going to go awful? Or do you take any kind of outcome that happens and do you turn it into something awful? Which one of those? Now, it might not be that it comes up in every single situation that you find yourself going into catastrophic thinking, either in anticipation or in the aftermath, but are there specific types of circumstances that do make you feel more vulnerable, that do tend to trigger this type of thought patterns? Take a minute and even let us know in the comment section below. It's easy to get stuck in this catastrophic thinking because it can be seductive. When it comes to anticipating future events, thinking that something is going to go terribly, somewhere in our brain, we kind of have this private logic that that's going to prevent us from vulnerability. If we can assume that something is going to be terrible, then we kind of think that we're protecting ourselves and anticipating the worst, which is then going to make us more prepared. And if the worst does happen, it's going to not hurt so much. It's not going to be as hard. But do you see how when you have done this and things haven't gone the way that you wanted, that it doesn't make it any less difficult, any less painful? And as I'm going to talk about in a minute, can actually be contributing to this certain situation or circumstance going south. And then on the other side, when we are catastrophizing an outcome and making it mean something terrible in some way, it can be used to protect us from trying again, from showing up and getting hurt, frustrated, discouraged, or disappointed again. If we think this was awful, I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, I can't handle this, then we are much more likely to give up and not bother trying again, in part because we're on some level trying to protect ourselves from future disappointment. But here's the catch. We think that assuming the worst is protecting us from vulnerability, protecting us from the hurt or the disappointment that will ensue if the worst does happen, because we're anticipating and in some kind of way preparing ourselves for it. But here's the truth. When we assume something is going to go terribly, we show up in usually a defensive or self-protective or rejecting or rejected way that contributes to the outcome being the undesirable one. In essence, we contribute to things actually going terribly. Back to our example with Sarah. She had these thoughts that everything was going to go terrible. She wasn't really wanted. Things were going to be awkward. It was going to be hard. She had filled her brain with all kinds of thoughts that this situation was going to be awful. And so then what did she do? Whether or not she was able to fake it or not, she was putting out an energy that was a resisting energy, that was a rejecting energy, that was kind of keeping herself cut off and closed off, maybe even coming across as kind of prickly or with a bit of a chip on her shoulder, which then, what is the normal human response to someone who has this energy coming out from them? We can feel it. Those of us, especially who are highly sensitive people, we can pick up on that energy no matter what someone is kind of looking like on the outside. What do we do around people like that? We hold back. We give them space. We maybe feel uncomfortable and don't really feel safe coming close because we're like, they're giving off some kind of rejecting or pushing away energy. And so then we hold back. We pull ourselves back. And so then you see how Sarah was like coming in with this energy. People were maybe keeping a bit more distance from her. They were holding back a bit. They weren't making that extra effort with her. And then it became the self-fulfilling prophecy. See, no one really wants me here. No one's making a big effort. I don't feel really connected, without recognizing that a big part of that was because of how she showed up in the situation, because of these catastrophic, catastrophizing thoughts that she brought with her that were contributing to it. Often, when we assume the worst, that plays a part in the likelihood that the worst will happen. And not only that, the lead up to the thing that we are catastrophizing about feels awful in itself. When we assume something is going to go terribly, be awful, fall apart, be awkward, be difficult, we create all kinds of feelings of anxiety, stress, and dread when we haven't even yet done the thing, experienced the thing, but we are experiencing really uncomfortable emotions in the lead up to it. It can make us go through life assuming that disappointments and threats are inevitable and that they're everywhere. It can also prevent us from potentially really great opportunities or experiences, because if we've convinced ourselves that it's going to be a disaster, then we're more likely to not even do it in the first place. The other thing that catastrophic thinking can do is it can create bigger problems for ourselves if we react to these catastrophic thoughts. So let's say you have a friend that hasn't texted you back in what you have decided is a reasonable amount of time. Say that's 2 hours. And you have decided, you've created the catastrophic thinking that because they haven't texted you back within that 2-hour window that you've decided is the reasonable window for someone to text someone back, you've made it mean they don't like you, they don't care about you, you're not valuable to them, they're not willing to take the time for you, right? You've all gotten yourself all upset about how terrible of a friend this person is because they didn't follow what you think they should be following. But maybe in their mind, 12 hours is more of a reasonable window with which you should text someone back, because they assume that everyone understands people are busy, they have jobs, they have commitments, they have to-do lists, they have errands, they have other things going on in their lives. And so to them, it's a much larger window. But if you have the thought that it's a 2-hour window, and as soon as that 2 hours passes, you start to have all these catastrophic thoughts, what's going to happen when they do text you or call you? How are you going to respond to them? You're probably going to have a bit of a chip on your shoulder. You're probably going to be a little bit upset, maybe a little curt, maybe a little passive aggressive, or you'll come right out and say, hey, that was really rude of you. You're not a very good friend. I can't believe you did that. And they're thinking, what did I do? Which then might make them pull away or kind of take that space and not want to be as close to you because they feel like, oh my gosh, this person gets mad at me when I don't even know what I've done or think I've done anything wrong. This is just too much drama. And so it can make something that might be an issue for you that you've created all of these catastrophic thoughts around, and it can turn it into a really big problem. So what do we do about it? Now we know what the problem is and we can start to identify it. How do we stop it? First and foremost, just notice it, but without judging yourself for it. It's not going to be too helpful if you start to pay attention to yourself doing it, or you even recognize now that this is something that you do quite a bit, and you go into thinking catastrophic thoughts about your catastrophic thinking. I'm such a terrible person. Oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. I'm pathetic. I'm such a loser. That's not going to be helpful. So we're just going to notice it and be like, for whatever reason, this is a thought habit that I have picked up or learned somewhere along the way. And I am now going to work on it. Do you see how that difference is with those different ways of thinking about the same thing? You experience catastrophic thoughts, and you're going to have one reaction that's going to make you feel terrible and one reaction that's going to make you get to work and do something about it. So just start to notice it. Wow, I notice that I am catastrophizing right now. I noticed that this thing happened and all of a sudden my brain is going in and creating all of these stories that are making me feel stressed, anxious, upset. Isn't that interesting? All right, brain, I see what you're doing here. The next step, work on considering alternate thoughts. So let's say your friend didn't text you back in that 2-hour window. And instead of being like, oh my gosh, they don't have time for me, they don't like me, they're a terrible friend, assuming that they were busy doing something else. Or it could be like what happens to me, where I'll see a text, I will start replying to it, and then one of my children will come in the room and ask something of me, or there'll be something kind of dinging from the computer, or I'll be in the middle of making dinner, or something else is going on that takes my attention away mid-reply, and then it kind of leaves my brain, because in my brain, I'm like, oh yeah, I replied to this person, but I never actually, in reality, finished the text or pressed send. Just assume that people don't automatically hate you or that they're not automatically terrible people if things aren't going exactly the way that you'd hoped. When we assume better, usually better happens. So really just considering alternate thoughts. If you didn't get the job, instead of being like, oh, I'm a terrible person and I can't do anything right, and I'm dumb and I'm an idiot, being like, okay, there were other people that applied for this job. There's probably someone that was more suited to this position. What could I do now to increase my skills, my knowledge, and my abilities to make me a stronger candidate for next time? Do you see how when we work on adjusting our thoughts, everything changes? Considering different thoughts and acknowledging that when we don't know for sure, there are all kinds of different options about what's going on, and be interested in why you are always choosing the one that makes you feel terrible. Again, without judgment, just with some curiosity. The next one, commit to learning from your outcomes. When it's about something that didn't go the way that you want, just like we said with that example with not getting the job, learn something from it. Instead of making it mean that you are an idiot, make it mean that you have more to learn. So let's say that the relationship ended and you're heartbroken and it's really hard. Instead of making it mean that you are an unlovable reject, make it mean something else, like this wasn't the right fit, or there's some things that I want to work on so that I can be showing up differently in my relationships to be able to create healthier relationships. Maybe there's some attachment work that I want to do. Maybe there's some self-love work I want to do. Maybe there's some boundary work I want to do so that I can increase the chances of having healthier and better relationships that last. And also taking into account that sometimes we don't know why relationships end. We can't get that clear definition. It's not necessarily one person's fault. It's just that people want different things. All of these are other optional thoughts. So commit to learning from your outcomes instead of rejecting yourself after you have ones that you don't love. The next one, commit to accepting yourself no matter what. No matter what happens, you will not reject yourself. So often, it's not the feared outcome that we worry about the most. It's what we are going to make it mean about ourselves if it happens. So if you can commit to loving and accepting yourself no matter what, then so much of that fear of an undesirable outcome is gone. And there's just no need for that catastrophic thinking. The next one, try motivating yourself by what you want versus what you don't want. So when it comes to going into a social situation that may feel a little unfamiliar, that you might be feeling a little insecure about, maybe it's a social situation, maybe it's a work situation, maybe it's a school situation, maybe it's a family situation, instead of going in assuming, oh my gosh, I'm going to feel awkward, this is going to be awful, it's going to be weird, I'm going to feel weird, I'm not going to know what to do, what if I get overwhelmed, what if I can't handle it, right? All of these kinds of thoughts, going in being like, okay, what do I want? I want to go in there feeling calm, confident, focused. I want to go in there bringing the best of myself, assuming the best, feeling good about me, and then taking the time to make sure you are doing those things and practicing those thoughts that are going to be self-supportive versus self-rejecting. And then our next step, take a moment to practice just noticing your thoughts. Noticing your thoughts for exactly what they are. Whether or not they are thoughts that are catastrophizing, awfulizing, or terribilizing. Not that that's a word, but you know what I mean. Just notice them for what they are. They are just thoughts. They are just sentences in your mind that your brain is grabbing onto to make some kind of meaning from whatever it is that is going to happen or that did happen. They are just thoughts. They are not necessarily truths. I have an exercise that is going to help you with this one in a big way. It's called my 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise. And this is one that thousands of you have already. I get emails all the time from people saying, I listen to this one every day. It has changed the way I relate to my brain, and I don't get so reactive anymore from just doing this simple exercise that it's made a big difference in a lot of lives. It's free. It's in the description below. You can grab that right now. My wish for you is that you go forward expecting the best and being willing to work it out if it doesn't come to fruition. Going into situations expecting that things are going to be at least okay, if not great, and then trusting that no matter what, you will be there to catch instead of kick yourself if you fall. Always good to have you here. Let me know what connected with you in the comments section below. And as always, take good care of yourselves, take good care of those around you, get that 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise. Until next time.